All right, I had a bunch of y'all ask about beading supplies, so let's go through this. What do you need in order to add beads to crochet? Step 1, you need your yarn. This is Expression Fiber Arts Sparkle Decay. And step 2 is you need your beads. We've got 6s, we've got 4s, we've got 2s. The DK weight works well with all of those. 6s are great for fingering. If you're going down to a lace weight, you can get 8s or even smaller beads. The next thing you need is you need a way to get the bead onto the yarn. You can use a steel hook. I've got a set that I found, and it comes with a bunch of really small sizes. I tend to use mostly the 3 smallest sizes. You're going to want to make sure that your hook works well with your bead. Slide the bead on. There we go. Make sure that it goes on. I generally go for the largest hook that can still fit the bead and the yarn comfortably. In addition to hooks, hooks are just easy to find. They're everywhere. You can also get specialized beading tools. So this is the Flegel beater, and it comes with 2 stoppers and a little cover. If you pull the cover off, you can kind of see there's a little notch, and it kind of holds the yarn in place while you slide the bead onto the yarn. The stoppers are super handy. You can put a stopper on while you're working, like after each stitch. I find that a little cumbersome. I tend to put it on only if I'm traveling. If I'm putting down the project for an extended period of time, I'm gonna put the stopper on, leave it be. My favorite beading tool though, and the one I use most, is this one. You can see it's a little well worn. I found it at Michael's. That's the brand. It's got a really long shaft and a really big notch at the top that really grabs the yarn, and I find it hooks really well onto the yarn, holds the yarn in place, and makes it really easy to just get the bead on. You can kind of see that it's super bent at this point. I've used it so much, and every time I yank it, it bends a little out of shape. It still works without issues. The downside of this one is there's no top. So every time I'm leaving, I kind of shove all the beads off. What I actually end up doing a lot is I take this little stopper from my Flegel beater, put it right on top of the tool, and it stays on. But that's it. You can also use floss. You can also use whatever else you find. You want something that's thin enough to go through the bead easily, has some way of hooking onto the stitch to hold the stitch in place, and then you can kind of slide the bead onto the stitch. If I'm using that steel hook again, we're gonna use the hook to pull the stitch through the bead, and there we go.